The embarrassing fall of the Night Elves. What happened to the Night Elves? Let's find out.
During the recent events in Warcraft lore, the Night Elves just can't stop losing. But what if I told you they've been on this downtrend for thousands of years and have fallen tremendously from the powerful empire they once were? Our story begins 15,000 years ago on Azeroth, where a tribe of dark trolls discovered the Well of Eternity. The well was formed from an ancient titanic event on Azeroth and left a limitless font of arcane power that surged with energy. This energy transformed the life around it, including the dark trolls. They evolved to have similar characteristics to the
You know what? I think that's actually one of the strangest parts of WoW lore. So apparently, like all the elven races, even the blood elves, they actually come from the trolls, right? Like the dark trolls. They look kind of like the dark spear trolls that we can play now on the hot side. And they apparently sort of evolved into a new race because of the well, with this arcane energy that changed them and all that. And then at some point, some actually left this area. They moved to another region. Then they became the blood elves. And it is actually very, very interesting. It's kind of like weird, right? When you think about it, like trolls are elves. Elves are trolls. Okay, this is confusing, right? But yeah, this is interesting.
The dark trolls. They evolved to have similar characteristics
Look
to
more
the
like
Titans
humans though,
and would
right?
adopt a new name,
The elves.
Kaldorai, meaning children of the stars. They learned to worship the moon goddess of life, Elune. Now the details of who Elune actually is still shrouded in mystery, which is pretty rare now in the Warcraft universe. We do know a lot about Elune's sister goddess, but
From
really,
Ardenweald.
that's it.
The Winter Queen.
And speaking of Elune, her son, Cenarius, taught the Night Elves the affinity for druidic magic. The demigod would be instrumental in the upbringing of the Kaldorai, and through his teachings, druidism and the protection of nature would be a core part of their society. The other side of Kaldorai's society developed an affinity for the arcane. They used the powers of the well to build wondrous temples and expand their ever-growing empire. At the helm of this expansion was their exemplary ruler, Queen Azshara.
Oh.
It's Brittany, bitch.
Queen Azshara was born with glowing golden eyes, a sign of her future greatness, which was more than true. She was beautiful, strategic, strong-willed, and ruthless. Now in Night Elf society, there was a clear separation between the arcane magic noble users called Highborn and your typical Kaldorai. But that didn't stop.
Like if you want actually to have any race or tribe or something, if you can call them even tribes still, like the closest to the ancient Night Elves right now are probably the Nightborn, because like Night Elves were not so much about druidism back in the day, according to the lore. They were more into the arcane, especially under Azshara, right? And if you want to find something that is somewhat similar to how the Night Elves used to be, it's probably the Nightborn. And the Nightborn are actually one of my most favorite races in WoW. I just think it's so cool. I like Surima. I had so much fun during the quest line in Legion. And yeah, like they teach you more about like the Nightborn, about the history of the Night Elves actually, if you're really into that.
There was a clear separation between the arcane magic noble users called Highborn and your typical Kaldorai. But that didn't stop everyone in the Empire unanimously praising their new queen. They loved her so much, they renamed the capital city to Zinashari, meaning glory to Azshara. And the only real enemy that threatened the Kaldorai Empire was the trolls, and they were easily crushed because when you have a font of unlimited power and soldiers that live for 10,000 years,
yeah,
makes
they can
fighting
train
pretty
a
easy.
lot.
Azshara kind of just let the trolls live in the mountains of Zuldazar and told them to never expand into Kaldorai lands, and practically the entire continent was now under Kaldorai rule. But Azshara wanted more. The Queen of the Kaldorai made a pact with who she would later discover was Sargeras, the leader of the Burning Legion. Azshara wanted nothing more than to wipe out all of the lesser races on Azeroth, making every inch of the planet under Kaldorai rule. And the Well of Eternity was used as a portal to summon a horde of demons, kicking off the War of the Ancients. And okay, I've talked about this war probably like 13 times on this channel because it's probably the most important event to ever happen on Azeroth.
That's true, because this war actually is the reason why we have the map that we have right now. Like, why there's the Maelstrom and everything. Like, this was insane. She, like, nearly destroyed freaking Azeroth, like, the whole planet. Like, this whole event could have been much worse, and we wouldn't have this continents, but we could maybe even have, like, no continents at all or something. And yeah, there's also, like, some interesting lore with that, with Ashara and the events with, like, Illidan. So if you're, like, a big Demon Hunter fan and you want to know about the origin of the Demon Hunter and about Illidan, like, it's also connected with this event. I actually watched a couple of lore videos to that. I read through that online and stuff. It is very, very fascinating. So I highly recommend, if you're into lore, to check this one out. And by the way, guys, if you're new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content.
Like 13 times on this channel because it's probably the most important event to ever happen on Azeroth.
True.
And is also the point where the power of the Night Elves starts to fall off of a cliff. Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
the war ends with all of the demons being banished from Azeroth, but also the Well of Eternity explodes,
Boom.
and the entire planet is fractured, and like 90% of the Kaldari Empire is destroyed. After the destruction of the
Unfortunately.
planet, at the brink of death, Ajara and her loyal subjects got turned into fish people by the
They were
old god
cursed.
Nazoth. So they technically aren't Night Elves anymore, but they live in Night Elf ruins underwater. More on them later. When the dust settled, the remaining Kaldari attempted to pick up the pieces of their now fractured empire. Illidan Stormrage, being the dumbass that he is, had vials of water from the Well of Eternity and used it to make a new well. Which, what the hell? What are you trying to do? Blow up the world again? He was imprisoned for 10,000 years after that. And the dragon aspects helped build a new world tree over the well, which accomplished a multitude of things. The world tree of Nordrassil would regulate the power of the new well and mask its power from evildoers trying to seek it out. It would also use the energies of the well to heal the world, and most importantly, it would make the Kaldari immortal, so they would not die of old age or disease. This was a new age for the Kaldari, and the leader that rose to power was High Priestess Tyrande Whisperwind and Malfurion Stormrage. Well, it was Malfurion when he wasn't sleeping, hanging out in the spirit realm of the Emerald Dream
Oh, yeah.
with other druids doing druid stuff. I don't know, it's kind of vague. Point
Yeah,
is,
weird.
it was mainly Tyrande who had to deal with the aftermath of the Sundering. After this event, Night Elf society pivoted to be heavily focused on a druidic lifestyle,
Yep.
and the use of arcane magic was forbidden, punishable by death.
But one thing's weird though, as Night Elves we can be now a mage, so how does the lore explain that we can be a mage as a Night Elf right now? As I know, like the Nightborn, they're still like following the OG ways of the Night Elves, just like it was with the Highborn, right? But what about like mages in the Alliance as Night Elves now? I'm very confused. Like, is there any lore or any point where like they changed their mind and said, okay, you know what? Now arcane magic is allowed again. Like what happened? What event led to mages joining the Night Elves so you can play one? If anyone knows, please let me know in the comment section, because I still don't understand this part. Because all I know is in character creation I can play as a Night Elf mage, and there's no explanation why.
Lifestyle, and the use of arcane magic was forbidden, punishable by death.
Wow. How brutal, right?
This was controversial to say the least, and the remaining Highborn, who had an affinity for the arcane, thought the banning of magic was for cowards. Dathramar Sunstrider, their leader, explained that the Highborn had been using arcane magic for thousands of years before
Is it the
Ajara
guy that
even
became,
ever became the ruler,
Blood Elf?
and it was impossible to deny the great power of the arcane. They were going to continue using it no matter what. It was their birthright, and they weren't going to let any low-born, tree-hugging hippies tell them that they can't use it. The Highborn were then exiled / willingly left Kaldari society to start their own empire in the
And
Eastern
became one of the
Kingdoms,
coolest
and would
race.
later become the High Elves, and then the Blood Elves we know today. The next big event in Kaldari history was the War of the Satyr. Satyrs were once night elves, twisted by demonic corruption,
I wish
and they
they were
combined their
playable.
efforts in a unified force to attack the Night Elves. In order to combat these demons, some druids tapped into an ancient druid form, forbidden to use because of how dangerous
The
it
wolf
was.
form?
These druids were called the Druid of the Pack.
Yeah,
and
that's
in
the
their
origin
wolf
of the
form,
worm.
they were unstoppable killing machines, but in their frenzy, they could not discern friend from foe.
Oh no.
Instead of killing these crazed druids, they banished them to the Emerald Dream, and 10,000 years later, they would re-emerge and become the Worgen we know today. And let me just say, it's hilarious. The Night Elves are like, arcane magic? Yeah, no, that stuff is dangerous.
But one thing confused me always about the Worgen. So, if Night Elves used to be Worgen, why we don't have for the Worgen? Like, we have like the transformation form, right? Because we are basically Gilneans as the playable Worgen. But why is there not the option to actually be a Night Elf Worgen? So you're basically a Worgen and you can, in the character creation, choose if you are a human or Night Elf Worgen. Like, why were we never given this option? Because there are also Night Elf Worgen, but we don't have like Night Elf Worgen in the customization option for the Worgen. So you're always a Gilnean, a human, right? It's kind of weird. It would be more lore-friendly if you could also be a Night Elf Worgen, I think. Maybe in the future we get a patch that allows us to do so. I have two kind of forms you can select if you make a Worgen.
And 10,000 years later, they would re-emerge and become the Worgen we know today. And let me just say, it's hilarious. The Night Elves are like, arcane magic? Yeah, no, that stuff is dangerous, and it's corruptive, not good. Let's ban it all and then use druid magic instead. And then right after, they tap into corruptive druid magic and they start murdering each other. Yep. Night Elves are very logical. The next war is the War of the Shifting Sands.
Oh.
The old god Cthulhu and his insectoid creatures,
Cthulhu.
called the Karaji, stirred awake in Silithus, and the Night Elf forces traveled down to snuff them out. And then they got the ever-loving crap beaten out of them, and they were forced to retreat. And in fact, they needed help from the dragons to bail them out, and imprison the old god threat once again. Perhaps the war would have gone better if they didn't, hemorrhage themselves and they actually used arcane magic, maybe?
Yeah. Make
I
them
don't know,
weaker.
just an idea. Between the War of the Shifting Sands and the events of Warcraft 3, there really is no substantial history about the Night Elves. They have just been living in seclusion in the northern reaches of Kalimdor. And I've ragged on them a lot in this video, but the depiction of Night Elves around the time of Warcraft 3 is by far some of my favorite world building done in the Warcraft universe. They're incredibly cool. To outsiders, the Kaldorei have become this elusive, powerful force deep in the enchanted woods of northern Kalimdor. 7-foot-tall Amazonian sentinels stalk trespassers in their lands. From within the dark brush of the forest, their glowing eyes hunt their prey, shimmering with bright white light reminiscent of the goddess they worship. Their tactics are flawless, having honed their skills for tens of thousands of years. When Gromhellscream tried and failed to claim Ashenvale, he is quoted saying, "These women fight with unmatched savagery. I've never seen their equal."
You know what? That's actually also what I love so much about like the Night Elves. Like Warcraft 3, when I was like playing on the campaign as the Night Elves, I thought everything about them was interesting because they were shown as us to a quite mysterious race. They were very druidic, or even there you have like buildings in freaking Warcraft 3 that are literally living trees, most of them except like a few. And I thought it was like cool how when you were like, for example, on the Horde side is like an orc, and then you have like suddenly you go to a map and then they say, oh, the trees are talking and this and that, like what's happening? And that's how like from freaking trees you're being attacked and stuff. I thought this was like so freaking cool in Warcraft 3, and I always had fun playing on the Night Elves. I love their units. This is really cool. I actually do hope we get in the future a Warcraft 4 with some cool lore again, and maybe out of Warcraft 4 they can make a World of Warcraft 2 in the future, maybe 10 years from now or something, who knows. Now that would be really cool if we ever get a Warcraft 4.
They are perfect warriors. And that is Gromhellscream, The War Guy. Hulking druids the size of refrigerators can feel your very presence trespassing into the forests they have formed a deep spiritual bond with. They transform into savage beasts that can rip through a group of soldiers in a single swipe. The Kaldorei are not nice. They're intolerant, savage, spiteful warriors of nature that hold dominion over the forests of Kalimdor. And it's badass. During the Third War, the Night Elves fought against demons, Scourge, Horde, and Alliance. Pretty much everyone that wasn't a Night Elf. And they suffered, kind of heavy losses, partly because of their stubborn nature. Their demigod Cenarius was slain by Fel Orcs, and the Kaldorei would not team up to defeat the demonic threat until the very last battle for Mount Hyjal, where Malfurion sounded a horn to rip Archimonde apart with 1,000 wisps and blow up the World Tree of Nordrassil to defeat him, ending the Kaldorei's immortality in the process. Between the time of Warcraft 3 and World of Warcraft, the Kaldorei grew a new World Tree of Teldrassil, and built their new capital of Darnassus. And the Night Elves turned from the stoic...
But I wonder one thing though with the world tree. Each time they make a new world tree, for example Teldrassil, do they regain immortality again? Like what happens each time they make like a new tree, like a world tree? Will this make them immortal again or not? That's something I really don't understand. Because right now, it's a big question mark if the Night Elves are currently immortal or if they age like other races.
Teldrassil, and built their new capital of Darnassus. And the Night Elves turned from the stoic, elusive, savage protectors of nature, and now they're...
Oh my gosh. Peaceful. Weird.
Okay. Night Elves in WoW aren't necessarily bad, but they have definitely lost the edge that made them a step above the rest.
In Warcraft 3.
Instead of being these aggressive tree huggers, now they've kind of just turned into...
hippies.
Tree huggers. This is partially because gameplay triumphs over lore constantly in Warcraft's story, and the Night Elves join the Alliance.
Nerf them.
Yeah, the faction that is on the other side of the planet, and now they take orders from a king who has lived a small fraction of their lives and has an even smaller fraction of combat experience. Throughout Classic WoW, the Night Elves are dealing with the corruption of Teldrassil, yeah, it's corrupted, and the Horde's logging expedition to Ashenvale. And for the next 2 expansions, Night Elves exist, but their story and their place in the world really doesn't change. During the Cataclysm, the world has been broken by a cataclysm, and the Night Elves suffer considerable damage because of this. During these troubling times, we actually get a shakeup in Kaldorei society. Morden Evershade, leader of the few remaining Highborn left on Azeroth, apologized for all the blowing up the world stuff, and the very few remaining Highborn were reintegrated into society. But the amount of Highborn that actually exist is very, very small, and really is just an excuse for Night Elf mages to now be a playable race and class combo.
Yeah, but that's still strange. So a small group of Highborn, with one being Mordant Evershade, returns to the Night Elves. There are very few numbers, but now suddenly you can play as a Night Elf mage. Ha ha ha, how weird. So just for gameplay, game design reasons, they just added this. Not because it's logical, but because you know what? Players want to be a Night Elf mage. Let's add something, no matter how strange it is. Let's have a few Highborn return. How weird.
This is very, very small, and really is just an excuse for Night Elf mages to now be a playable race and class combo. Also during the Cataclysm, the Worgen broke free from the Emerald Dream and ransacked the town of Gilneas. Since the Night Elves are mainly responsible for Worgens even existing in the first place, they help out where they could, and they invite them into the Alliance. Meanwhile, tensions between the Horde and the Alliance were ramping up. Horde offensives pushed into Darkshore and Ashenvale, but were repelled by the Elves. Although it wasn't a decisive victory. In the zone of Stonetalon Mountains, a giant goblin-engineered bomb was dropped on Thaldrala Grove, killing soldiers and innocents alike. Finally, over on Mount Hyjal, the World Tree of Nordrassil has grown back, but the Night Elves still aren't immortal. And they play a huge role in defeating Ragnaros, who has set up a base nearby. Okay, well, all things considered, it's going pretty well for the Kaldorei right now, but this is just the calm before the storm. Miss Pandaria, nothing happens. Warlords of Draenor, nothing happens. Legion, a lot happens.
Yep.
First off, Tyrande and Malfurion travel to a zone called Val Shara. This is an ancient location where Malfurion was first born and trained to be the first ever druid to exist on Azeroth, under the tutelage of Cenarius. More recently, the satyr named Xavius has been corrupting the lands. During the questline, Malfurion is captured and Tyrande and the player character need to rescue him. Malfurion is an incredibly lore-rich character, whose
true.
personality has been expanded upon over 21 years in books, comics, and in-game cutscenes. But for the average fan of World of Warcraft, they know him as the guy with the most hilariously pathetic voice lines where he's all like,
Tyrande, I need you. You cannot keep me from her. Where
Yeah.
are you, Tyrande?
That's so weird.
No.
And here's the funny thing, it's actually Xavius impersonating Malfurion in these voice lines.
Oh.
But everyone kind of forgot about that detail, or it was just poorly translated. Also during the quest line, Ysera dies, a very close ally to the Night Elves.
Yeah, that was a
Oh yeah,
setback.
also during Legion, the Nightborn, a Highborn adjacent faction of elves, wanted to ally with the Alliance, but Tyrande was apprehensive because they reminded her too much of the Highborn, with their limitless power and addiction to magic.
That makes no sense. Were we not at a part already where some Highborn actually rejoined, like came back to the Night Elves, like to their society? And now there are a race like the Highborn, the Nightborn, and they're not allowed back in? Yo, that makes no sense, right, guys, when you think about it? Because, there are already a few Highborn that came back, so why can't the Nightborn come back? This is also just, let me guess, this was also just so the Horde can have some sort of Night Elven kind of race that they can play. So this was not for lore, but game balance or design reasons. So stupid.
Limitless power and addiction to magic. So they joined the Horde instead. And then, in the Battle for Azeroth expansion, in BFA, the burning of Teldrassil is easily the most controversial event in Warcraft history. It was a radical change made to the game's story and world, something that is really rare in the MMO medium, and Night Elves suffered immensely. Easily their biggest loss since the Sundering of the World, but with great loss meant that we are able to get the brutal side of the Night Elves again, something that had been missing for the entirety of WoW since then.
That's true.
And visually, it was awesome.
This is so cool. Yo, this is the best part.
Tyrande, I need you.
What? He didn't say
Tyrande
that.
partakes in an ancient ritual to become a Night Warrior, empowering herself with the vengeance of Elune. This is so cool, but ultimately feels hollow when she struggles to fight Nathanos, a guy with a bow. I feel like it would make more sense if she used her powers to turn him into literal ash because, you know, empowered by one of the strongest goddesses in the universe and all that. And again, the retaliation of the Night Elves feels hollow because the Alliance wins the battle to reclaim Darkshore, but it happens off-screen, the zone is a wasteland, and they push them all the way to the crossroads in the Barrens, which is explained in mission table quest text, which can't possibly be more underwhelming. And hey look, oh my god, Ajara is back. Her model is dope, her voice actress is
Wait. This much lore is in a battle table mission here. A large alliance army answers on the crossroads, attempting to cut off Murgor and Durota. You are kidding me. So you have to do that to understand what's happened. I mean, it is good to make like those battle missions like relevant, right? But like this, seriously? Is that seriously how it went down?
possibly be more underwhelming. And hey look, oh my god, Ajara is back. Her model is dope, her voice actress is amazing, the zone she's in is beautiful, and and she's gone. Well,
Where is she now?
Waited 15 years for that one. The Shadowlands expansion comes out, and if the Night Elves didn't have it hard enough, all of those elves that were murdered in the burning of Teldrassil are being funneled directly into hell to be tortured for all eternity, which is so dark and depressing it's almost comical. Tyrande manages to fight Nathanos alone and kills him this time, and then charges into the depths of hell, killing everything in her path to save the souls of her people. Later in the expansion, she finds Sylvanas, the one responsible for the suffering of the Night Elves, and they have a 1v1 fight, which, again, visually, so dope, but it ends with Tyrande's powers waning and Sylvanas just getting away, which again makes the badassness feel pretty hollow. Hell, even if she left a small little wound on Sylvanas, it would make this scene 1,000 times
like a second
better.
scar.
And ultimately, the storyline ends with Tyrande realizing she must focus on the renewal of her people.
What would have been so cool, so she got like a scar here from Southend. What if she got another one on maybe the other side, like the cheek, like a little one or something from Tyrande or something. Like this would have been so cool. And then like each time she see those wounds or something, those scars, she knows, oh, I've done like 2 times something really bad or so, right? Like one reminds her of the burning of the tree, and one because like she kind of betrayed the Horde in a way, right? So like the true OG Horde. Yeah. Too bad.
Hell, even if she left a small little wound on Sylvanas, it would make this scene 1,000 times better. And ultimately, the storyline ends with Tyrande realizing she must focus on the renewal of her people instead of vengeance, which is... But there's a silver lining to this. In order for Tyrande to not be the Night Warrior anymore, she basically has to go through this exorcism. And we get the coolest voice acting that we've gotten in WoW for years.
OMG. Wow.
Now, even after she chooses renewal and is normal Tyrande again, she still is very mad at Sylvanas. But, you know, I'd much prefer in the world of Warcraft having Tyrande kick Sylvanas down to the pits of hell and then focusing on renewal of her people. But that's just me. And look, there's a lot of things about Shadowlands I can continue to talk about and how disappointing it was for the continuation of Warcraft's story, but really, I don't want this video to devolve into every single other lore video about Shadowlands that ultimately becomes Shadowlands is bad.
What?
Okay, but not everything is horrible for the Night Elves. Tyrande was given a new world seed imbued with the souls of dead Kaldorei, which most likely means we're getting a new world tree at some point, but it's currently in the Emerald Dream for safekeeping. And you know, seeing the amazing scale of Dragonflight zones, it should be pretty awesome compared to Teldrassil, which in-game was literally just a stump, surrounded by fog. And you know how I just said the seed is safe? Well, that's a goddamn lie, and the suffering of the Night Elves isn't done yet! Later on in Dragonflight, bad guys called the Primalists invade the Emerald Dream and seal it off from being accessed from Azeroth. But it can be accessed from the Shadowlands, and the only one that can do that is Ysera, the former Green Dragonflight aspect that died in Legion. In order for her to leave the realm of death of the Shadowlands called Ardenweald, she needs someone to take her place, which Malfurion agrees to do. Sound convoluted? Yeah, I know. So basically Malfurion is in timeout in the realm of death while Ysera does stuff, but eventually they'll swap places again. And in response, Tyrande says what every Night Elf fan has been thinking for the majority of Warcraft.
But one thing I'm very confused about, so can't I always thought that like they can be reborn if they are very powerful in the Emerald Dream and just enter again. Was this like with scenarios like that? He died before and then he came kind of back somehow. It was like reborn. Why can Ysera not do this? Be reborn in the Emerald Dream and then just return to Azeroth? This is confusing me as well.
Again. And in response, Tyrande says what every Night Elf fan has been thinking for the majority of Warcraft's story.
I am so tired, Malfurion.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the Night Elves, they had it quite rough as well. But the Trolls too, like... There are several races that had it like really tough. I feel like probably the Trolls had it the worst. Maybe closely followed by the Night Elves story-wise. The Dwarves, they had kind of like some mess in the past because of their wars and stuff. But like lore-wise, I feel like the Dwarves are not doing so bad. Humans are okay too, Orcs are alright. But yeah, Night Elves and Trolls, they got like almost the shortest end of the stick. But I think they are really cool. Like, I started loving the Night Elves, and as a race find them very, very appealing and fun to me because of like Warcraft 3, the way they're shown. Because they're quite mysterious, they're close to nature, but they also have their sort of savage side. Just like Grom Hellscream said, oh, they are such fierce warriors, they are so strong, this and that. It's like really, really cool, like when you get to experience their story in Warcraft 3. And I feel like actually, like, during classic WoW, like vanilla WoW back in the day, like the first Night Elves and their missions and stuff, and how you start on the world tree, like on Teldrassil and stuff. I thought this was also a cool introduction. Like, I loved leveling one up actually during vanilla days when first WoW came out. I thought their beginning area was very interesting. I think, yeah, my favorite ones were definitely, I liked really Forsaken. I thought like Night Elves were maybe the second coolest starting experience. Yeah, it was really fun actually with like Night Elves. I remember, I have some good memories of back in the day leveling up some characters. But yeah. This with the Nightborn and with the Highborn coming back, this is like blowing my mind because they took the Highborn back, right? That are into the arcane. That's why we can play mages as Night Elves. But the Nightborn they couldn't join. And that makes no sense to me, right? Like, Blizzard only did this so there is a balance and the Horde and the Alliance side gets like a new allied race, and that there's no imbalance. Because if you have like one more race to pick on one faction, it's kind of out of balance. But then I still think it's better they introduce a brand new race, give the brand new race to one faction, and one existing but super cool race gets to the other one. And they can always still rework them. If they feel like model and look wise they're like not up to date, then they just remodel this and then they give it to the faction, right? Like the Horde could have gotten like another playable race, and the Nightborn could have been moved to the Alliance, in my opinion. But yeah. I still think the Night Elves are pretty cool. I still play some. Like some of my characters are actually Night Elves. They also have OP racials. They're quite strong, even in PvP. And yeah. If you guys are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. If you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this one a thumbs up. And I will see you guys next time.